Hi, I'm Michael Forrest, and today's devlog is all about quality assurance as a solo developer. So I'm going to be talking about my tools and processes today, showing you a bit of Elixir, showing you a bit of Swift stuff, maybe. So yeah, back when I used to have a real job, I would be part of a team with designers, UX designers, graphic designers, motion designers, and then we'd have developers, front-end, back-end developers, we'd have managers. But, most importantly for me was that there were testers, like people doing testing. I really appreciated the comfort and safety of knowing that there was a layer of quality control that would, hopefully stop me pushing some catastrophic error to production, or worse still, to the App Store. And this was when, it could take up to 2 weeks to get your app reviewed by Apple. So one little mistake could just be there, and you'd have to do the expedited review and all that stuff if you messed that up. But there were also times when I didn't have that kind of testing support, and those were the times I got deep into all kinds of automated testing. When I was the solo developer on MUBI's first app, I developed this incredible UI testing suite because it was just so stressful pushing that app live with no testing. But yeah, it took a lot of work to create that testing suite. The problem with automated testing is that it effectively doubles your workload. For every feature you add, you need to come up with clever ways to automatically test it. And then you're not just debugging the feature, you're debugging the code that tests the feature. And it's just a lot of extra work. So you go slower, but you're safer, right? Less technical debt, lower chances of future regressions. Well, yes, but it does come with a big but, which I'm going to illustrate with a story first. So one of the worst server developers I ever worked with was at a startup where the front-end team, which was me, an Android guy, a web person, we would constantly need new back-end features to support our work. But this guy was incredibly resistant to adding anything new to the server, fear-mongering about all the risks, and then he was just incredibly slow when he did agree to anything. He was this bottleneck that just really got in the way of any progress. And his startup, that's really important. And I just found it really frustrating how much he was slowing everything down. He ended up leaving the team, and so I took temporary custody of his Ruby on Rails code base. And I found that he had 100% test coverage on this code base, which was okay, that's a bit nuts. No wonder it takes him so long to change anything. But why was he so afraid to change anything? Because it would be the least risky thing in the world. The whole point of having tests is now you can just change code and that you've got test coverage, so you'll immediately find out if something went wrong. The whole point of unit testing is oh, I'm not going to accidentally break something over there when I change something over here. But I just think he didn't want to have to deal with that double-pronged effort of introducing features and tests at the same time all the time, or having to rethink all of those tests just to add shoehorn one new thing in. And that's that's an understandable concern. Since I've been working full-time as a solo founder, the most important lesson I'd say I've learned, and this is me in my 40s after being a professional coder since my 20s, the most important lesson I've learned is not to spend months polishing a product into sort of bulletproof perfection before releasing it. I discovered that my best chance of success was not to pursue an elaborate personal vision, but to make something in an afternoon and then put it in front of people, and then if that doesn't work, try something else, and just keep making things and putting them out there until I find something that people want. Much more effective. And you make something simple, it's there's not many ways it can break. So imagine if I was writing unit tests for every single thing, trying to anticipate scaling it up to 1 million users. I would not have got anywhere, and I would have had to go back to contracting a long time ago. But yeah, as I said, the nice thing about a simple app is that there isn't a lot that can go wrong. So the delay calculator on Square's TV is 150 lines of code. It's all just a static HTML page, really. All runs in the browser. There's no server-side stuff. So that sort of stuff I can test, and that really took off. People come in every day and use that thing, and then that's my sort of gateway to bigger and better things. But now that I do have some more established apps, instead of that app being, instead of sort of making standalone features for, instead of making different apps, I'm sort of making little features for the apps I already have. So then that does change the dynamic a bit. So I might be able to add a new thing in an afternoon, but I'm accumulating little features on this kind of landscape I've created for myself. So Let's just talk about like the apps. Let's find out about what kind of levels of complexity we're dealing with. So Shoot Pro Webcam has how many lines of code? Well, it's got about, like, I listed out the features folder. It's got about like 9 major sort of like feature categories in there, and that comes in at 16,000 lines of Swift. So that's Shoot. And then Video Pencil, it has maybe 5 sort of like headline features that of that sort of scale, and that comes in at about 14,000 lines of Swift code. But like, what about CueCam? So CueCam has, you know, this is like the feature flags that I can sort of toggle on and off and try things. So like the virtual camera, the scene, different scenes, show slides, the editor, the card, you know, like all these different things that it does. And doesn't do, like these things I can turn off. All these different things that I've sort of played with and added over time. Well, you know, what do we have here? So CueCam Presenter rolls in at around about 45,000 lines of Swift. And there's also a fair bit of Objective-C and some C code in there. And it's also got, like, something I'm going to talk about today, about 16,000 lines of Elixir code on the server, because CueCam Presenter has, you know, it's not just a desktop app. It's got to sort of check in with the server. It does things via the server, like sign in, billing, all that stuff. But admittedly, a lot of that 16,000 lines is like back-end reporting systems and all that kind of thing. But there's a lot of stuff in there. And I think it may be overcounting lines of code as content, which would be separated in that. Swift stuff is pure code. This might sort of be counting like basically HTML that's kind of within Elixir components as lines of code. So I don't know if it's quite a representative. But yeah, that's still a lot to deal with. And it's a lot to stay on top of as a solopreneur. Like how many, well, I'm responsible for like 100,000 lines of code, at least 50,000 lines of code, probably 100,000 lines of code, sort of like I'm affected by on a daily basis. I receive support emails about on a daily basis. So how do I not break? And, you know, how do I keep moving forwards? Like, how do I not turn into that guy that doesn't want to add anything? You know, I need to not break it whenever I touch it. But how do I do that? Is the short answer is with great difficulty. So I'm going to show you 2 ways that I'm kind of like approaching this. So one is, we're actually going to skip this and go straight to, because I realized, right, I'm going to show you how I do the server stuff. Because my server-side tests actually, I wasn't doing amazingly at this, but then, you know, if it's interfering with billing and stuff, that's really a big problem for trust and for, you know, me being able to make money. So I'll show you sort of how I've approached testing. So this is Phoenix Elixir. Hopefully, if you're interested in those technologies, this will give you a couple of little ideas. So this is this is just like smoke tests. Literally, I just like hit some different pages on the website and check that they don't. That they you know, give me a 200 status, and you wouldn't believe how many problems this catches. And I think like part of this actually is because Elixir is this compiled language, and you know, I'm catching a lot of errors at compile time, which I wouldn't if it was Ruby. So that sort of helps, but this kind of helps me, you know, just make sure I haven't done something stupid, because stuff still can get through, and so this has saved me a few times just having this little test here. So we just like, I just have a random number of, and then like you know, I've sort of done some stuff so that you know, I've got a couple of fixtures. I chuck in I sort of create this some tutorial fixture. I create some guide so that I can sort of go to some of the slightly more dynamic pages here. So that's the first one. Just like check that your you know, your landing pages aren't broken. And the next, although what this didn't catch, so I'm currently submitting my OAuth verification to Google because I want to add in some YouTube stuff. And today I got a thing back which was, oh, your privacy policy page is just a blank white page. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And I can't even remember. I'm sort of pretty sure that I did a proper privacy policy, but it's sort of like, I can't totally remember. And then I go to it and I realize, oh no, it's just that there's a white box with white text in it because I changed this website from dark text to light text. recently, and so I haven't caught all the pages where I've sort of like hard coded in like text, and so it was just white on white, so you couldn't read it. And so that was like obviously a very easy fix. But how would you? I imagine the complexity of trying to anticipate and catch a problem like that. You just can't. Like, you just have to just kind of wait for this stuff to come through, or, you know, at least, yeah, I don't even know how I would automatically check that. You see, I've checked that I have the pages, but like beyond that, I haven't checked that it's legible to a human being. And, you know, what do? Take a screenshot and then check that there's words visible on it. It would catch it. If I just did it, like, is this word on it, it would find it. But so I'd have to take like a bitmap and then do some sort of contrast AI like OCR thing on it. Like, so you can imagine you could go crazy with this testing stuff. So that's why I just try to keep it as simple as I can. But there is another challenge, which is Stripe webhook responses. So I'm integrated with Stripe, and a lot of that works by it calls my server with information about what the user has done. So if they cancel a subscription, if they pay or a payment fails, it hits my website on a certain URL and like with a payload. So these are tests for, okay, if I get a payment failed payload, then does it handle it? And you know, I catch these as I go. So I usually grab the JSON from Stripe's dashboard and just chuck that into a fixture. So I've got like a growing, you know, I've got these Stripe payloads with like invoice paid, like invoice payment failed, and so that I sort of chuck those into fixtures and then maybe edit a couple of IDs to make it easier to work with, and then just like, rather than, because when I call my webhook controller, you're going to see it's got to like sign it and do some secret stuff and before it can get to here. But like, so I just call this handled valid event directly to sort of bypass that with my payloads, and then just check that it's like okay. So check that this like sends an email, check that this, you know, all these different things. So actually there's not many, but like these are really important ones. And then finally we get into some finally we get into some Phoenix Live View testing. So this is sort of like what the Phoenix tests look like. So we sort of get, we call this live thing, it gives us this view process. So it took me a while to get my head around this, but we get this view process and then we can sort of like go through that and look for things. But my little secret sauce here, like when it fails, it was like really, it was just, you had to look at like raw HTML and try and figure out like what was going on. So what I did was I added this little save temporary file. So this is going to save a temporary file, just using this code here. I'll leave that on screen, but this basically just writes the rendered view to a file in temp, and then just like kills the app.js to stop it like breaking, and then just like gives a message to say that's where you can find it. So if you see, we just made the test pass, but if we go to, if we just like break this now, so here it wants to say, what, like check that it says $7.99 a month. So why don't we just go over here, and where it says X a month, we'll just make it say like this is bad, right? So I've accidentally like typed something there. Let's just change that and. My zoom level and sort of go back and run that test. So if we run this now, we are going to see it try and run, and here we're going to get this failed test. But you see down here, look at that, this goes, you know, give me that lovely, give me that URL. So I can click on there, and now I can see, oh look, this is where it went wrong. So I can sort of instantly have a visual look through what went wrong. So that saves me, sorry, I'm just going to crank up my similarity on my green screen again. This saves me an awful lot of headaches, I'll be honest. So it's all very well having these tests, but how do I make sure I run them? Well, you know, I've set up GitHub Actions in the past to do sort of continuous integration, but then I have to like push to 2 different repositories, or like I hadn't really set it up to deploy from GitHub, and I just didn't really keep on top of it. And these days I have a much simpler solution, a deploy script. So here's what happens when I go to deploy. So I just type let's go for white. I go deploy dot sh, right? Instead of going fly deploy, I'm hosted on fly, I run my script. And so what does that script do? Well, first, if there's any changes, it launches GitHub Desktop so that I can like just start like editing my commits and just make sure that they're all tidy and make sense. Meanwhile, it runs my unit tests. So now I'm sort of like thinking about my commits while it's running my test suite. And then obviously if the tests fail, just abort the deployment. And then if the tests finish before I finish, then it just waits for me to like press Y once I've finished doing my changes. And then if I commit first, so it will just deploy. So I'm just like incentivized to kind of like, okay, let's get these commit messages sorted out quickly. And it's a nice little game for me to see if I can beat the test suite when I'm committing my changes. So this actually like works out really well. And so here's what that looks like. It's you know, I check. Oh, sorry, baby screaming next door. He's doing that. So I check if there's anything on there and launch GitHub if it's not clean. And then I run mixed test. And so basically if that fails, then the test failed. And then if it succeeds, then I check if, sorry, I hope that's not coming through too much, the baby screaming. If it's not checked, then it like waits for you to press Y to continue. So I just do this git read rn and then check the response. And if it is clean, then just where do we do it? If it's not Y, we kind of fall through to this fly deploy. It just checks again that it is actually. So I can say yes, I committed it, but if I didn't, it's going to exit. And then fly deploy, and then I also send it up to Honeybadger. So I'm using Honeybadger to track errors, and that's the other part of this as well. But I'll be honest, like, you know, ChatGPT is invaluable for writing bash scripts, or like, you know, no one needs to be writing shell scripts in 2025. It's kind of horrible. This syntax is so grim. So yeah, that's how I keep the website sane. So now let's talk about the Mac app. Well, I'm going to start by telling you what I don't use. I don't use XC test case. I don't use XC UI test. I don't use Swift testing. I don't use keep it functional. I don't use OC mark or anything like that. I don't use Spectre and Expector. These are all things I've used in the past, or, you know, well, not Swift testing, that's relatively new, but no, I use something far more effective and maintainable, and that is called a checklist, which you may have glimpsed. Yes, before I release a new version of CueCam Presenter, I manually go through a checklist of about 100 manual checks. Because, you know, that's just it. Now, you know, it wouldn't be me if there wasn't a little bit more to it. So I do have, you know, have an elaborate coder doc, which we should be able to see here. So we can have a quick look at my checklist and get started. So this is left over from the previous one. So I have a button here. So I know what my next build number is going to be, and I go add build, right? And that basically, I have a master checklist of all my tests, steps, expected result, like notes and stuff like that. And then yeah, so basically that button will copy all of that checklist into a new table with that new build number and make the current build the new one. And then basically I'm going to go through this. I'm going to check the binary size. I'm going to try sharing something. I'm going to check that the screen share is saved. I'm going to check if I share an app that the picture-in-picture works. I'm going to check that the overlay works. I'm going to check that the green screen works. I'm going to check that it can be zoomed. So I'm just going through, like, you know, if I share an app with audio playing, then the headphones monitoring should be disabled. And so I'm just going through this whole checklist before I'm allowed to ship a build of CueCam, which is why I feel like it's taken a little bit longer to ship builds of CueCam, but they're certainly, I hope you've noticed that they're a bit more stable recently if you have been using it for a while. And then we've got, you know, so that's basically how I'm doing it. So if I click pass, I know I haven't changed anything of the file size, that's there. I've got a little defer button. I've got some notes. So if I go like fail, I can also say, you know, if I click fail, but I can also say it didn't didn't do X. Then if I look up here, then all my notes for what the failed tests are come through here. So that's this is sort of like a coder document that sort of helps me manage that big test suite and like keep on top of it and keep track of what happened. So yeah, I think I should probably get on with that because I do want to ship a build of CueCam. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you the script that I used to make this video, because we are trying to show you how CueCam can be used by giving you devlogs. So here is, let's just get into demo mode. Let's make sure demo mode is working. So this is devlog 10. All right, you see we're recording. I'm going to make this nice and big so you can see this script. So here it is. All right, here's my title card. Here's my bullet points that appeared. Here is just my script is all just up here. So like literally I was just like reading today. And then like I did a little bit of jiggery pokery with the bullet points. So you see these, I'm using this little syntax where I can, so if we do a bullet like that, it's a bullet point. But if we put a slash before it, then it doesn't have anything, it doesn't have like a little bullet point. So I was doing a bit of jiggery pokery with that. I've got image share, and then sort of when I was showing you the code, I was jumping to those files. So you can see that's a screen share of that code. It's really annoying how that works. And you know, that jumps to that right file. So we're doing some stuff with the code there. You see in this one, you see when the zoom went off a little bit, that was because I guess we have a thing where I'm sharing two different apps at the same time, so it didn't sort of pick up the default zoom that CueCam gives it, because it was sharing both the browser and code. But you know, it was fine. It was fine. And then this is actually something I just sorted out today. So now, like, I've just added a new thing into the bullet menu, which is a numbered list. So before you could like put in one custom character, but you could, if you did one dot, it would just come through as like a dot. So I just fixed it so you can go like one dot or one, you can have as many characters in that bullet prefix. But the important thing here is it lines all of the content up against that left edge of the bullet point. And I originally made this to sort of work with like smiley faces, but actually, like for numbered lists, it's quite nice to have all this stuff lined up. So you see, if we made this narrower, you can sort of see the numbers and you can see the things, and I think that just looks much better. And I actually thought, well, let's put in like a little template here, so you can do that, and it selects the first thing, and you can sort of see how to do that. So hopefully, if I can get this build out today, then you'll be able to have a look at that. You can. I have to, you can use CueCam right now. Just go to CueCam.app, download it, give it a go. And if you have questions, stick them in the comments or come and join us on Discord and ask me there. I love talking about this sort of stuff. Elixir, Phoenix, Swift UI, Xcode, all this stuff. I really love a chance to talk about it. So if you've got technical questions, I just love that. So thanks for watching. I know this is a bit of a longer one, but it's quite a big subject, so I don't mind. I will hopefully see you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. This is Devlog 10. The other one's probably worth a watch as well. Cheers, bye.